advocacy communication is a strategic and persuasive form of communication used to champion a cause, policy, or social issue. It involves conveying messages and information in a way that influences public opinion, drives change, and mobilizes support for a specific objective. Advocacy communication can be employed by individuals, organizations, and movements to raise awareness, gain allies, and ultimately create positive social, political, or environmental impact. It often combines a mix of media, public relations, grassroots organizing, and storytelling to effectively convey messages and shape the narrative surrounding an issue, driving action and change. Now, not everybody is able to do this. To have a positive social impact requires the correct mode of communication. uh, you would have someone train you to communicate in the same way. So here we have today a corporate lawyer to human rights litigator to documentary filmmaker to advocacy communications professional. And she is Piper Hendricks, and she runs the organization called Stories Change Power. She's the executive director and she teaches the art of advocacy communication. Welcome to the podcast, Piper.
Thank you, Tej. It's so good to be here today, and I really appreciate the introduction. And it's true. I think advocacy communications truly is an art, and it's a joy to be in the field and a joy to be talking with you today.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Piper, coming from a professional now, could you elaborate on the role that advocacy communication plays in addressing the problems facing us and how it is a major contributor to achieving a more just and peaceful future?
I'd love to, and I appreciate your introduction. I think you covered a lot of the different elements of advocacy communication, and I'd invite your listeners to think about the last time they took action wanting to change the world. And what I mean by
Mm,
that is it could be a call to your senator or representative or other elected official.
mm,
It could be
mm.
attending a school board meeting to support or oppose a new policy. It could be any attending a protest, attending a rally, attending something where you're signing a petition. All of those things are actions that you take wanting to change a system or a law or a policy. And those things seem invisible, laws and policies and systems, and yet they impact our day to day in every way we can possibly imagine. And so when people take action, when you, the listener, has taken action, you had to know first about that issue. You had to care. You had to know what
Right.
action to take. And ideally, the action you took was one that actually made a difference. And wrapped
Right.
up in all of that is advocacy communication, reaching people to know that there's a problem, to believe that there's a solution, and believe that they can be part of that. And if that sounds easy, it's absolutely not. With all the things that are vying for our attention today, there's so much that we need to cut through and to reach the right people who have the power to make a difference. And that's what advocacy communication is about. And what Stories Change Power is about is to equip people to be effective advocacy communicators. There are a number of organizations with absolutely wonderful causes. And if we don't do advocacy communications well, then we're not going to achieve our respective missions. And Stories Change Power is all about helping organizations achieve those missions through effective communication.
Right. I love the name, by the way, Stories Change Power. It sounds, it's like everything told in that one title. Talking of, you know, a problem, an issue, and somebody wanting to communicate about that issue. Now, I mean, this is my personal opinion here. The first thing that I would feel is a little bit of fear or anxiety to understand or approach some official or some agency to ask for some sort of information about it, and then to understand the entire topic completely
Mm,
and then communicate. So it's a long process, right? So do
hmm
you also tell people how to go about it in terms of steps or phases?
I do. And actually, we take a nine rights approach in our advocacy
Hmm.
communications programming. And that's looking at the right framing, the right message, the right messenger, the right actor, the right platform, time, team, approach, and metrics. And within
Hmm.
each of those is, and I'm going to apologize because I do have a 6-month-old puppy here at my feet that's discovered something to scratch at. So apologies if you're hearing that in
No
the
problem.
background. But that's exactly it. It is understanding the bigger picture before we go in and try to become part of the solution. And we talk about that in a number of different ways in Stories Change Power. We're looking at a problem and looking upstream. That notion, people may be familiar with this expression of pulling books out of a river, but who's going up the river to see who's throwing them in the first place? And
Hmm.
so we look at that, we look at the historical context, because you to go in with a very narrow mindset to try to propose a solution is to ignore that bigger picture. And so part of advocacy communications and being effective is understanding the bigger picture, and then understanding the people who are involved in that, both their power and them personally. And I'm happy to dig into that more, but I think you're right. There's a lot to research and a lot to understand to be effective.
Right. So there are some principles or strategies that you emphasize in your people centered or research based programming to enhance
Mhm.
advocacy communication. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
there are a number of, across those nine rights. There are a lot of things that similar principles that emerge. I think the two
Hmm.
biggest are understanding people and understanding the bigger picture. And when I talk about people, I'm talking about those who have the power to change an issue, whether it's
Right.
any policy, law, solution. And so understanding their motivations, understanding their goals, but then also understanding where there are people who are directly impacted. And this is something that we look at throughout the course, being ethical, being fair, being inclusive. And so we're
Hmm. Hmm.
never speaking for someone else. And there's a couple things where I get really, focused on different words. You'll hear people say, "Oh, I'm
Hmm.
giving someone a voice." That makes me cringe because everybody already has a voice. It may be a voice that's not
Hmm.
heard. It may
Hmm.
be a voice that's excluded, but they have a voice. And so understanding, who is it that's involved in the issues that we're addressing, and including them along the way. And that can get complicated because there may be times that the person who has the power to make a change isn't going to listen to the people who are impacted. And so a lot of advocacy communications is bridging that gap, keeping the
Hmm.
people who are impacted involved, keeping them at the table, and also reaching those who have the power to make a change. So that's understanding people as one big principle, and then understanding the bigger picture, looking at the history, as I mentioned, looking at the bigger issue, and really aiming to understand before you come in with solutions.
Very, very interesting. Yes, you just explained why these values are important in advocacy communication. So you talk about, incorporating respect, candor, and growth into your programs. So, so important to take into account all these aspects and then, communicate. So, Pai Patella, what are the key benefits of for mission-driven organizations and their team members who participate in your professional development programs?
So there are benefits internally and externally for organizations that are part of Stories Change Power. Internally, if you have a more effective team member, then externally, your communications will be more effective. I work with a lot of smaller organizations where quite often you
Mhm.
have a communications team of one, and that can be really daunting for a
Hmm.
number of reasons, including if someone is earlier in their career, they're coming in without a great deal of experience and reporting to someone who does not have communications experience. And I heard over and over in interviews earlier this year that informed the programming that I launched in June that people felt really lonely. They felt really isolated, and they didn't know
Hmm.
where to turn. It's advocacy communications is a unique space that quite often is not part of undergraduate programs. There's not a lot of professional development and training out there. And that really confirmed for me this is something I want to do. I don't want people who are working on wonderful causes to feel isolated and not know where to go. And so, what Stories Change Power does is condenses a lot of learning into a short amount of time. Instead of learning along the way, as I did for many, many years, this can be something that people have the framework and the foundation right away. And alongside that, they've got a cohort to learn with. And then at the end of our cohort, I match them with a mentor to support their learning for a year. So all of that is with the purpose of supporting more effective advocacy communications. And there's also the benefit to the organization where when people feel like they know what they're doing, they don't feel isolated, they feel empowered. Hopefully they'll stay
Mm.
longer. It reduces turnover in addition to reducing that learning curve and the time it takes before you're really making an impact. And I feel in this world there's so many important issues and we don't have time to waste. I think we need to go out and be as effective as possible as soon as possible.
Right. Very, very interesting and very magnanimous of you to even start something like this. Find that this is a niche area that is lacking and finding that zone where you are able to provide assistance. Let's take a break to understand what Chezuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chezuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chezuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chezuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chezuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest. So, Piper, do you have any specific resources or tools that you provide to help organizations and individuals enhance their advocacy communication efforts? So, individual is one, but
Mhm.
organizations also. Do you promote some kind of the number of people and the kind of people who are in organizations?
I'm not sure if I follow the question entirely. Can you elaborate
Right.
a
So,
bit?
if you want a nonprofit to succeed, do
Mhm.
you advise them on what kind of people do you need to employ?
Mm, mm. I do in the leadership. I'll take a step back for a moment. The support that I provide, there's two types of support for two groups of folks, and that's one-on-one coaching and then the cohort-based learning. And that's
Mhm.
for new professionals and experienced leadership. And I use the term new very specifically because new professionals are not always young. There are folks who are coming out right after college and university and moving into these positions. But there's also folks who are moving into an advocacy communications role mid-career or after many different chapters in their professional journey. And so it's very open, anybody who's new to advocacy communications. And with the leadership, I think this is something that really emerged also with the interviews that I did earlier this year. And it was one of those connections that I look back in hindsight and think maybe I should have recognized that earlier. But talking to new professionals who were saying, I'm reporting to someone who doesn't have a communications background. Well, that someone who doesn't have the communications background quite often is in leadership. And so empowering both ends of the professional
Mhm.
equation, so to
Mhm.
speak, where you've got somebody who's new to the role and their focus is advocacy communications, and then you have someone who's in leadership who needs to know how to support them. And so in the leadership cohorts, I do talk about how to set the values, how to set the tone, how to set the direction for a team. I've not ever said specifically, here's who to hire, but getting a sense of here are the skills that you need, not only in that advocacy communications role, but throughout your team. And that's something that we get into talking with the right team, where everybody within an organization has a role in communications and in supporting
Mm.
communications. And so that's something that we talk about in the leadership cohort to make sure that, everyone is, there's so many expressions that I'll go to sometimes. I don't want to say rowing in the same boat, because that suggests some folks are going backwards without seeing where they're going. I like to think of
Right,
everybody singing from the same choir sheet.
right. So now again, a question related to this, but not exactly what you are doing. But do you think that some people have the inherent talent of, you know, communicating, or some
Mm.
people understand communications better than most people? Would you say there is something like that?
What an interesting question. I do think, all of our journeys are so unique, right? And I think that some folks along the way naturally have more of an interest in communication and may have more experience in any number of fields, or areas where that their interpersonal communication may naturally transfer over into advocacy communication.
Hmm.
I I'm pretty stubborn, though. I think that everybody has the potential to communicate effectively. And I just was on a plane 2 days ago next to someone who was headed to an oh my goodness, was it anthropology? I forget which conference, but he's an expert in obsidian. And we had the most fascinating conversation about communication. And he said that, that the research that gets done is the research that gets funded. And so even communicating about the study of rocks and what you want to do and what's important, I mean, that's the work that gets done. And so it's not based on it, there's no inherent meritocracy around work. It's communicating in a way to a particular person who then has the power to make a decision. And I think about the number of, the vote in Tennessee many years ago around the Equal Rights Amendment, and or the right to vote. That turned on one vote, and someone who was reached by a letter from his mom, and that was persuasive to him to vote in favor of this. And so that's a long and kind of
So
meandering
interesting.
answer, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, but I
that
get it. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think
Absolutely wonderful.
when people see the value, I'd like to think that there's a way to learn, but it is hard. I mean, it is hard in our current, especially the current environment, where we're looking at so much division, and I think there's a lot of forces out there, a lot of things that are benefiting from our staying divided, and a lot of that comes from a place of fear and fearing the other. And so it's even more important now, and even more challenging, to be reaching across divides and trying to find common ground, because, like it or not, we're all on the same planet, and we all have the same shared future, and we all have a role in
Absolutely.
determining what that future is going to look like.
Absolutely. I wish more people would understand this. And I think, Piper, you are going to be a very, very busy person indeed in the near future and in the
I hope
future,
so. I hope
because
so.
because we need people like you to explain why it is important to communicate and how issues can be solved rather than, fought over.
Hmm.
Wonderful talking to you, Piper. It was lovely talking to you. And last question here: what is the process for organizations or individuals to become involved with stories change power?
Mm. There are four key ways. Anyone who would like one-on-one coaching, I encourage you to go to our website and sign up, or just send me an email directly. That's piper@storieschangepower.org. Secondly, join a cohort. We have a new professionals cohort underway right now, and I am absolutely thrilled by the wonderful people who have come from all over the country and are part of this. And we'll be starting our next cohort early
Lovely.
next year. So it's on a rolling basis. Apply anytime. I also am looking for mentors for these new professionals. It's something that we match very specifically to their needs. And so I encourage people, if you'd like to mentor someone for 1 year, to put your hat in the ring. And that's something that, I'll always be in touch before you're actually matched. And then last, donate. I'm looking to build this organization right now. I'm running it on a volunteer basis, and I'm looking to build it into something that is sustainable next year. So would welcome any conversations about that, or donations if you have the ability, directly through the website or through our page on global giving.
Sure, lovely. I think you'll see me as a student in one of your cohorts very soon.
I would love that, Tej, so much. I'd love to see you there.
Thank you. Thank you, Piper. It was lovely talking to you.
Wonderful talking with you as well, Tej. Thank you.
In conclusion, advocacy communication serves as a powerful catalyst for change. By strategically crafting messages, engaging the public, and mobilizing support, we can drive progress on the most pressing issues of our time. Thank you for tuning in.